Action. Join our exciting monthly promotions and events at the Live Poker Room. Have your next lunch or dinner party at our award-winning restaurants. Get fantastic perks as a Live Rewards member. Come into Live Casino and experience the excitement for yourself. Live Casino, Route 30 at the Westmoreland Mall. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And it's 11:25 on this Monday, and it's time for the Quatrini Law Group with offices in Uniontown and Somerset, as well as Greensburg, specializing in personal injury, workers' compensation, Social Security disability, employment law, long-term disability, and veterans benefits. Call 888-534-6016. And today we are joined by Brian Bronson and James Miller. Guys, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. And go ahead, take it away.
Sure, and I like that introduction. And you know, it sounds like we practice in all these different practice areas, but our primary focus is on the individual and disability, injuries, disability. I've been personally with the firm for almost 25 years now, practicing Social Security disability cases. I've done more cases than I can remember at this point, representing individuals in front of the Social Security Administration, having hearings in front of administrative law judges, handling those types of cases. Just a little bit about my background from Latrobe originally. Went to law school at Duquesne, undergrad at Bucknell University, studied business, and then started honing my teeth in disability right off from the beginning. We have with us James Miller today. James is not yet an attorney, but could be. Look at my watch. Any hour, any day, or any minute when he gets his bar results.
Any given Friday in October, I could get bar results and be a barred attorney, but not yet. I've been with Quatrini Law Group for about 2 years, starting the summer after my first year of law school. And before that, I was a mechanical engineer. I grew up in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, went to Pitt for mechanical engineering, and then came to law school a few years after working in the engineering field. And so today, as we get to know Brian and I, we're going to talk a little bit about Social Security disability as something I've just dipped my feet into, and something that Brian's been practicing his entire career. And so, Brian, as an attorney or somebody who's just starting getting to know a Social Security case, what does somebody need to know about whether or not they are eligible for Social Security?
Sure. And one thing, I'll kind of start off with one other thing too.
Point of clarification.
In the days of the internet, it almost behooves you to stay off the internet when you're looking into Social Security disability. You can get some very nice information from the governmental websites, but there are so many wives' tales and so many stories about Social Security disability out there, and so many websites that you could really get the wrong picture of Social Security disability that, I would encourage people off the bat is maybe look at the Social Security website itself, create an account, start to understand from that perspective. But you really should be reaching out to a lawyer or a practitioner.
Well, how do I even know I need a Social Security disability lawyer?
Good question. And I'll tell you another thing just before we do that is, so when I was a younger person, I'm not that old now, but when I was a younger person, we used to get our Social Security statements in the mail. And that's something, James, I think you'll never see.
Only when I file taxes, I see a big line there.
So we used to get a bifold every year, every 2 years, with our earnings listed in there. And it listed how much you had worked, what your earnings were, what your Social Security benefit would be all these 30 years later whenever you go to retire or you go file for disability. There's a number there. And, you'd look at it and say, okay, I hope Social Security's still there when I get there. Right. But it gave you some peace of mind knowing that, one, your earnings were computed properly, and two, that you had a benefit and this is the amount of money, and can I live off that when I get to that point? Especially pointed for people that are in that age bracket of getting ready for retirement. Nowadays, you have to actually create your account. So to answer your question, what do you need to know for disability and filing is, one, you need to create an account to know what your benefit would be. And so there are benefits from the federal government that are a little bit different. So there's Social Security disability benefits, and then there's SSI benefits. One's not necessarily better than the other, but if you work and pay into the system and have paid enough in the right time periods, you can qualify for Social Security disability. For those that may be a live-at-home spouse, somebody that has an inconsistent work history, or somebody that might be very young that becomes disabled, they can apply for SSI. Same qualifications for, what is disability under those two programs, but different financial requirements. So SSI is a needs-based program where you have to meet the needs-based. You have to have lower income or low resources, whereas Social Security Disability, you have to have the work in the right time period to qualify for. So again, we'll get people and they'll say, well, I was denied Social Security Disability, I want to apply for SSI. That's not quite how it works, but it's a good thought to know that they're two separate programs with a little bit difference, but in the end, they're pretty much the same.
So in the Venn diagram between those two programs, what is the overlap? What are the things, either path, that somebody needs to be concerned about in terms of whether or not they're eligible?
The biggest thing is you have to have a serious medical condition. Social Security Disability, SSI, are not for if you, sprain your ankle or if you break an arm. Things that are going to heal within a short period of time are not serious enough to rise to the level of a Social Security Disability program. If we think about it, there is no temporary disability in the state of Pennsylvania. Some states do actually have. New Jersey, for instance, has short-term disability for their whole population. If you sprain your ankle or you hurt your knee, you can go to the state and get a short-term disability program, even if it's not workers' comp related. Whereas Pennsylvania, we have no such program. So we only have Social Security Disability, which is more of the longer range. And I don't want people to think, that they have to have, kind of getting into those old wives' tale. You could call Social Security, you could live with, a serious illness for years and call Social Security about your disability claim, and you could get the impression that you have to be off of work a year to file that disability claim.
And that's not the case.
True. It is not true. Lots of our clients will stop work and file for disability the very next day. But you have to have a medical condition which is going to last a year, is expected to last a year, or could result in death. So let's say that we have a client with some severe autoimmune disease. Let's say it's MS, neurological, and that they have struggled to work for the last decade. And now finally it's, the medications aren't working as well. They're missing more days of work, and they say, I just can't do it anymore. I want to file for benefits. So if you hear the old wives' tales, you got to be off for a year. They may sit there and don't file for a year and then file for a year. And they could have already had their claim 3/4 of the way done, or if not on benefits by that point, if they had filed that claim from the day they first went off of work and had gone through the process. So, it's the seriousness of the medical condition that really equates to how quickly can you file after you've stopped work.
So it sounds like you could file on your own. At what point do you call a lawyer, and when does a lawyer need to get involved?
Right. So I would say from step one, you can file on your own. It's a good idea to call the lawyer first, to talk to the lawyer. There may be certain claims that the lawyer decides to take, and certain ones where they say, hey, it would behoove you to go out and file on your own. You might get awarded and not have to pay a lawyer. If you do get denied, then you can hire us at that point, and you really haven't caused any harm to your case. And that's kind of walking through the procedure of how to file and what to expect. So statistically, most people that file a claim get denied. Now, if you break that down into demographics, you might see that, as you get older into that 55 and older age group, that might start to equate to more of a 50-50 shot. But generally, it's about 70% of the people that file any claim for Social Security Disability get denied on initial application. And the little unknown thing is the people that make the determination for the federal Social Security Disability Program are a state agency in Pennsylvania. So most people get denied, then you file an appeal, you get denied again, and the second denial is called reconsideration. It's about a 90% denial rate. And then you go in front of a judge. And in front of the judge, you have your best chance of being awarded. I think national statistics hover around 50%, 49%. Ours have been much higher than that over the years. But that's about the chance. So it's usually deny, approve. And what this will kind of translate into in the old wives' tale story is, you have to be denied twice before you get approved. So what will happen, and this is some of the sad stories that we see, someone will apply and get denied. They won't appeal. They'll apply again and get denied. They won't appeal. They'll apply again and get denied. I've seen up to 11 or 12 initial applications without a hearing in front of a judge. Whereas being in front of the judge is the best chance to get awarded in the case. I wish it would occur earlier. I wish the administration would do a better job on the initial stages, but being in front of the judge. So if you get denied for Social Security, appeal. You get 60 days to appeal. You have to do it in writing with the Social Security Administration. They have an excellent website. And I've been around long enough to tell you that their website and their electronic filing that they used to have was garbage.
Okay.
They've spent a lot of time, a lot of your tax dollars in making a very nice program, a very nice website, a very nice system to be able to access those benefits, access your account, and make appeals online. So the online is the way to go.
So you apply, don't just accept that denial, but appeal.
Definitely appeal.
More likely than not, probably most probable, you'll be denied again.
Correct.
And so that opportunity, the next chance is at a hearing. And that is, should you go there alone? Or is that when you should get an attorney involved?
That would be a point in a case where it's very tough to pursue on your own. There are rules, and they might be rules that are a little bit lax compared to maybe a jury trial or something like that. But there are rules, there are misconceptions. You do have to present testimony, you have to present argument, you have to make sure your file is updated. One of the little things that people don't know is Social Security in the first 2 stages goes out on their own and they develop the record for you, meaning develop the record. They get your medical records from your doctors for free, which is a great service again. But again, you're taxpaying for this service. At the judge's stage, nobody requests anything. So
you have a stale record.
Right. So you have a stale record, and we'll have people that'll call us a week before the hearing. Can you represent me? Sure, but when's your hearing? It's a week. Okay, so wouldn't you be best postponing this hearing to make sure you get the medical in? No, they took care of that. Probably not.
Well, okay, let's talk about this. Why is the medical so important in this process?
And it's become more important over the years too. That's the one thing I'll lead with is, so when I first started being a lawyer, I didn't know if I had boyish good looks, but I could go into a courtroom in a Social Security case, and you could have a serious medical condition, a good work history, and the judge would go out of their way to try to award that person benefits. Over the years, there's been an erosion of maybe credibility or belief in listening to people talk about their conditions.
So somebody just saying how this condition affects them isn't enough now?
Not enough.
Not enough.
And in fact, the judges these days want to see a distinct paper trail. They want to see a primary care doctor. They want to see a referral to a specialist. They want to see continued treatment. So let's talk about somebody with a bad back, right? So you have a bad back, you go to your doctor, the doctor says, okay, try this medication, try some ibuprofen, try some Tylenol, maybe modify your activities, and let's see how things go. Go back to your PCP 6 weeks later, it didn't go that well. I'm still having pain. I'm having pain running down my foot. The logical thing at this point would be refer to a specialist, refer to a pain management doctor or a neurologist or a neurosurgeon for a further lookup. What we see in cases that are unsuccessful is that's where the chain breaks. They stay with the primary care doctor. They might see the primary care doctor a couple more times. They may have a serious condition, but there's no x-rays, there's no MRIs, there's no specialist involved, there's no continued treatment. So they have a very thin set of medical records. And again, they may have a more severe problem than somebody with 10 times as many medical records and referrals and surgeries, et cetera. But they're not going to be believed on their testimony with such a thin record. So these days, you have to treat. You have to go through all the modalities, the physical therapies, the injections, the pain management, potentially surgery, things of that sort, to be having a successful case in today's Social Security world.
And so that's what the judge at that stage we're talking about, and that's a hearing stage, correct?
That's a hearing stage, right. So you're going to go to a local hearing office. And it's kind of weird. Uniontown is not in the state of Pennsylvania where they're going to have their hearings. And people will be like, well, wow, that doesn't make any sense. It's a federal program. So there are federal districts that handle these cases. So Uniontown, anything south of Westmoreland County, Washington County is going to go to the Morgantown hearing office. So your hearing would be in Morgantown, possibly in Wheeling, depending how far west you are in our area here. But that's where those cases are handled. They're handled in front of an administrative law judge. So these are some people that are not elected. They are not appointed by the president, such as other judges in our federal system. They are basically federal employees that are lawyers for at least a decade, that get hired by the Office of Personnel Management and become federal administrative law judges with a large degree of independence. And when I say a large degree of independence, we have had good judges, we have had bad judges, we have had everything in between. Once they get into these positions in the federal judiciary, even being federal administrative law judges, they have a large degree of autonomy where they can approve or deny cases pretty much at will. Now, there are appeals courts that look at these, but there really is no disciplinary system that's going to come down and say, hey, judge, you're approving too many cases or not enough cases, or vice versa. So you get a lot of different personalities involved in this. Mm-hmm. You may get somebody that did my job for 30 years and has compassion towards disability. You may get somebody that had worked for an insurance company for many years who doesn't have the level of compassion or empathy for somebody that is filing a disability claim. You may get somebody that's not just, they may have, very good emotions towards people, but they may be a veteran. Yeah. They may have been a lawyer, a veteran, and they have never been in the disability program. So what we'll often see is that a judge will come in as a younger judge. It doesn't matter what their age is. They may be 58 for their first time they become a judge. And for that first year, it's a little bit of a rough ride. They don't quite understand, what equals disability, how to look at medical records and evaluate them, how to evaluate specialists. And, later, in their career, 2-3 years in, they become a very good judge in terms of finally being able to understand. So it does take a little bit of transition for the judges.
And this is the person making this critical determination at probably the best chance an applicant has. Right. And so when we're looking at our clients and how we best represent them through this process, can you talk more about what we do for them before that hearing and in that hearing? And then what happens if it goes wrong?
Sure, good question. So the biggest thing we do is help develop the record. So we will get clients in. And I remember having a client from not too far away here in Commodore that, for 13 years had been bounced back and forth from doctor to doctor to doctor, mainly primary care doctors, but some specialists, and told that she just had fibromyalgia. And, fibromyalgia can certainly be a condition that you can get Social Security disability benefits for, but a little bit tougher in terms of documenting and what you have to do. But this woman had other symptoms that, I'm not a doctor. And my wife, who's a nurse reminds me of that every day. But you looked at this case file and you just said, there has to be something else here. Well, all said and done, she actually had MS all these years and had been diagnosed. And only in the last time that we had finally represented her 13 years after she had started her journey for Social Security benefits. But what we were able to do is say, hey, you can't just sit with your PCP. You've got to go see a specialist. We can't tell you which specialist to see, but we can tell you there are a number of specialists in the area, and there are a lot of good doctors.
Well, and we want to see our clients get better, too. That's the thing. To see someone sitting with their PCP having the same results for 13 years.
Right.
You can't. How do you sit across the table from someone?
Some of the best things that we have done have been cases where we didn't make a fee. We didn't, end up helping this person win a case, but we helped that person get to the right doctor and that they were able to get diagnosed. And they call us up on the phone, and clients will call you, and you'll see this in your career, James. They'll call you and they'll be a little apprehensive, and they'll say, well, you've worked really hard for me and I really feel bad, but I'm going to have to go back to work. I say, stop. That's not something that's bad.
Right.
That's something that's really good. That you were able to have a serious medical condition, overcome that medical condition and start getting back to work where you're going to make more money than being on disability.
So let's talk about making more money, but also the human portion of this, that when somebody's battling with some type of medical condition for which they're applying to disability, getting disability benefits is almost the last thing on their mind.
Sure. And we'll see it, constantly that, the client I love to help is the client that doesn't want to be in my office. The person that, probably gets drug in there by, a spouse. Doctor says you need to file, or, a child says, Mom, you've got to stop working. And those are people that, again, we really want to help those people. We want to help everybody,
Right.
but those people especially because, they really need the help. And what we can do is, again, they may be early in their journey.
Right.
And a lot of those people usually are because there's people that have worked through 15 different work injuries and all these problems, and they haven't missed a day of work, even with all these injuries and accidents they've had. And, we're able to say, okay, take a step back. And I usually will draw a pie chart in my office and say, hey, I'm this little tiny piece of the pie. There's 3 pieces here. I'm the little tiny piece of the pie, and that's the lawyer. How old are you? How long have you worked? Do you qualify for benefits? What do you need to prove? Do I have a serious medical condition? What's my job? Because disability is always relative to what a person does. That's my little piece. The next little piece is the doctors. So you could have a serious medical condition, but again, do you have the specialist? Do you have the MRI? Do you have the functional capacity that shows you can't stand and walk? That's a big piece. You have the support of your doctors. Again, 25 years ago, you didn't really need to have a doctor signing off on your disability. These days, technically you don't, but if you don't have a doctor, filling out forms or giving you restrictions, it's much harder to get these benefits. So that's the next biggest piece of the pie. But again, those are less than a third of what that big pie is. And that big pie is, what do they want to do? How are they feeling on a daily basis? When they wake up and they go to work and they struggle through a day and they come back and they can't cook for themselves, they can't clean, their house is falling apart because they can't do the outside, what's that? But also there are people that need to work, because of their financial situation, because Social Security could take a long time to get.
And it takes a long time to get and doesn't pay that much.
That's right. So you get paid what you paid in. We'll often get asked, hey, what am I going to get from Social Security disability? And the answer is, I don't know. You could get $150 if you didn't pay in that much. You could get nearly $4,000 a month. None of it's enough to make you wealthy, but it's enough to make sure you don't lose your home in foreclosure. What also comes with Social Security disability is access to the Medicare system, and with health insurance premiums still continuing to rise at exponential rates,
Being able to go to the doctor to
able to go to the doctors to
things
treat.
that keep you from being able to work
Exactly.
is huge. Yeah,
Exactly.
So I don't know if you have anything more on Social Security disability, but you touched on something I think is really important that I see across all of our practice areas. When somebody comes to our office, it's the stress and the things they're dealing with on top of the precious moments they have in their life that they've lost for whatever brought them through the door. So I've been practicing some personal injury, helping around there while I've been waiting for bar results. And the phone calls and the paperwork and the headaches that our clients see while they're dealing with their injuries, they're down a car usually if it's a car accident, and they have medical conditions they've never had before. So what does our office and all of the attorneys, and I will say the incredibly dedicated staff we have, what do we do to help those clients?
So one, when people do come into the office, they're scared. They're nervous, so I often will, try to bring a little levity to them when I see them in the waiting room. But what we do better than anybody is, one, we'll sit down and talk to you face to face, not just with a staff person, but a lawyer with that person.
Yeah, and you heard the number of locations we have. We're there.
Right. We're there, and
meet
we'll
us
come
there.
to wherever we need to be. Two, we answer the phone, and you can call and talk to an attorney. That's invaluable.
It is.
I'll do initial meetings by, Social Security in person. Pre-pandemic, I think I saw 14 people a day in the office. Much less now. Yeah. It doesn't affect the quality. Some people can't
Just more
travel,
comfortable.
but we can do, videos with people. We can do FaceTime. We can do the phone. All of that. Now, one of the difficulties in, somebody could call up and say, hey, do I have a disability case? I need to know your information.
Right.
So when we do send out paperwork, our clients can help us as much as we can help them by giving us as much detail as they can. What is your job? How long were you there? What doctors are you seeing? When did you see them last? What medical conditions have you been diagnosed with? What symptoms do you have? So again, trying to see whether maybe their symptoms are missing from their diagnoses and they need to see somebody else. All that's important information that we can gather from that person. We can do it through a phone call, and get it. It's easier if they send it to us in writing before filling out our forms. We've done a lot of things in trying to make our forms easier to fill out, easier to go online and fill out, email, those types of things.
Well, it goes back to that whole pie, and it's our client's case. It's their case. We're just representing them. It's a team effort, right? And it sounds like that's what you're saying about giving information and collaborating on the decision making as these cases proceed. I brought a prop with me. We were in the green room, and I was reading the Herald from this past Sunday. And there's a woman in here who battled breast cancer, and it's a really incredible story. But I wanted to talk about some of the conditions that we see that commonly come through for Social Security disability. Just some statistics to help you out.
Breast cancer is a good one. Yeah, you want to give me statistics, and then
every 2 minutes in America, someone's diagnosed with breast cancer. 1 in 8 women each year, and there's about 4 million survivors in the United States of America.
And the survivors is the key to disability because, 25, 30 years ago, they weren't survivors. And so medicine has progressed to the point where we're very good at treating breast cancer. We're very good at increasing the survival rate.
But we've heard how terrible.
Right. And that's what people don't realize is that, post breast cancer survival, you could have had a massive mastectomy with problems with the skin after the mastectomy. What often we see is chemo brain. Not using technical terms, but, I remember representing a teacher and very nice woman, but extreme fatigue, survived, I think it was stage 3. I'm not the best on but it was a late stage 3 cancer that she survived. Significant cognitive difficulties, significant fatigue. She's a survivor,
right.
And her doctor will tell you, hey, this went as well as we could expect, but the aggressiveness of the treatment,
right?
And
so
really
the lens
result.
there, I think this is the key to tie it together for Social Security. The lens is, can she work an 8-hour day?
Right.
That's what the judge is looking at?
Right. So again, disability is always relative to what you do. So for us attorneys to be disabled, we can't be capable of doing our job. And then the next question is, okay, so if you can't do your job, depending on your age, and let's assume it's somebody under the age of 50, it's can you do any other full-time 40-hour per week job? So somebody has survived breast cancer, and now they have significant fatigue, they have cognitive difficulties, maybe they can work 20 hours a week, but that's it. And it's hard to find a job to only work 20 hours when you feel well. So that's a person that's a perfect candidate for Social Security disability. Now, if you have certain cancers that progress to level 4, stage 4 cancers. If it progresses past your regional lymph nodes, those are cases which are automatically awarded Social Security disability. Social Security disability is a book of adult listings where if the cancer has progressed to that point, the assumption is that somebody is presumptively disabled.
Yeah.
And that may be somebody that should still call an attorney, but somebody that maybe doesn't need an attorney in the end.
But it sounds like if you're on that list, and those are available online, right? Anyone can.
You can available online. It's the stage 3s, and stage 3 is very serious cancer. But even with that very serious cancer, the administration, the Social Security Administration, looks at that and says, well, it's just stage 3. It's not stage 4. We don't have to award it. And now we're looking at it. Okay, well, they're going to survive, so they can work. And the answer is no. Some people can, some people can't. It all depends on how those treatments, how well they tolerated those treatments, and how effective they were in removing the cancer, but in what residuals are left.
Right.
And again, some people look at if you can do any job, you're not disabled under the Social Security Act. And you think, well, that seems like an insurmountable standard, right? Well, let's take a look at regular jobs. You work at Walmart. How many days off do you get at Walmart a month?
Less than 2.
If you exceed 1 day of sickness per month, you can be found disabled under the Social Security Act. How many breaks do you get at Walmart? Do you know?
2:15 in a lunch.
Yeah, and a half-hour lunch break. If you need an extra break, an unscheduled break, you need to leave early. Again, you wouldn't be able to work at Walmart.
No.
Walmart is, in a way, a tougher job than what we do as attorneys.
Right.
I can take breaks whenever I'm done with what I need to do. And as long as I get done what I need to get done under an 8-hour shift or a 9-hour shift,
I was going to say, I don't think you're clocking in and clocking out.
But if we look at people that work at Walmart or work for another employer, and they try their hardest, but because of their disabilities, they're really only working 60, 70% of the day, then that's somebody that would be a good candidate for a Social Security disability filing. As you get older, as if you're a laborer. It's really tough. I mean, the dream is you work as a laborer in your 20s and 30s, you move into a semi-management position in 40s and 50s, and you end in a full management position when you're in your late 50s and 60s.
And you retire.
And you retire and make a lot of money. Well, people are working later. Not everybody gets to move to management. So you're now 55 years old and you're still doing the tough, roof laying that you were doing in your 20s.
It's back-breaking work, and they call it back-breaking for a reason.
They use the word arduous at times, when you're doing those jobs. So, now suddenly you've worked in roofing your whole life. You injure your back. You can't go on a roof anymore. What do you do? Well, I'd like to go work for an office. Where? What skills do you have?
Can you type? Do you know how to transfer a phone call?
Exactly. Are you good dealing with the public? No, I roof. I know how to do roofing. I do your roof in a day and a half and we're done.
Yeah.
So those are people, again, that don't have economic options. And the Social Security Administration, the Social Security disability is designed for people like that. When you hit 50, 55, and 60, you have a very physical job with skills that are very important skills, but they're limited to that industry.
They're not transferable. They
Right.
won't go to that office
In
job.
those events, you could still be theoretically able to work in a full-time job, but as long as it's in a lesser severe work classification, you can get disability benefits for that. And that's people that deserve that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we'd be taking somebody that's 58 years old, they're still 4 years prior to their ability to retire under the Social Security Act at a reduced retirement, and say, go find a job working in an office. And they're
Right.
not going to be able to do it.
Well, and what about the rest of their life? I know we don't have much time here, but someone who can't do that full-time job, but they can go to their kids' birthday party, a grandkid's birthday party. They can watch them. They could bake cookies for Christmas. How does that play into it?
None of that's inconsistent with disability. Now people that are denied by a judge may look at their decision and see, hey, the judge said I was baking cookies, I was doing this, I was doing that, and therefore I'm not disabled. That's inappropriate, but that does happen, and that's where the story gets told. Don't do anything. I can't do anything, or I won't get Social Security disability benefits. So, when my clients do get awarded, I tell them live their lives. Do as much as you can do. Because once you're on benefits, there's nobody watching you over the shoulder. It's not illegitimate to go and do those activities. In fact, if you don't do that stuff, that unfortunately you're probably going to die younger and not live a fulfilled life. So, now while your claim is pending, again, what we usually try to show in hearings is I might be baking cookies, but I used to bake cookies, every month.
On your own after work.
Now I'm getting pre-made and I'm doing that and whatnot.
Yeah.
So,
Well, thank you. And I hope that our audience learned a little bit more about what we do as a firm, but particularly in Social Security disability, and gives us a call or check us out online, qrlegal.com.
right. We have an excellent website, nice resources online, and we look forward to talking to you if you need help.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that was Brian Bronson and James Miller, and they are with the Quatrini Law Group, an office on East Main Street in Uniontown, as well as in Somerset and Greensburg. And they are on the first and third Monday of each month at 11:25 for the Quatrini Law Group. The phone number is 888-534-6016.
You're listening to WMBS Uniontown. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.